All right, community dinner. What are we at? March 25th?
Yeah.
March 25th. So a couple of topics came up today because it's an insight that doesn't get revealed to people. But one thing is about how the nervous system affects digestion. And so I'll go into that a little bit later. That's one topic. There are signs and symptoms that we call excess fight or flight. And there are signs of symptoms where it goes too far. And then we go into parasympathetic nerve dominance. And that's the tired and hungry, crabby, irritable state, tired and wired. When it goes too far, it's tired and wired. There's no sex drive, there's no appetite. And for some people like me, it means vomiting. That's the end stage for me. If I keep pushing, I'll just vomit. And that's the reverse. The stomach meridian goes down like a waterfall. And then when the stomach meridian starts to go backwards, that's nausea. And then vomiting is the reversal of the stomach energy. The stomach energy is supposed to go down. And the spleen energy goes up. They're paired meridian systems. So when that energy gets disharmonized, and some people are susceptible to it and others aren't. But the more we push, the more we push that edge. And so I'll go through some of those signs and symptoms because the theme tonight was what keeps you from springing forward and just keeping us in the way. And then the cleanse is next week. So I'll talk about, where do I have those? Two really interesting, simple products. One's a phosphorus product. It's a bright yellow phosphorus product called Phosphate Liquid. And that's for your sympathetic nervous system when you're nauseous. It acts to give your nervous system phosphorus. And Bernard Jensen used to say that where your attention goes is where phosphorus goes. So if you're thinking a lot, then you get the extra phosphorus into the brain, which is not going into digestion and causing problems. There's a lot of reasons why this phosphoric acid is a really good product. It also takes out calcium deposits. So I've got people with foot spurs and bone spurs. They go, you can't help me. And I go, 3 months on phos food and you too will be out of pain. Because the phosphorus is an acid that dissolves calcium. And they don't talk about that. And then the parasympathetic nerve sort of supplement is, it's called alfalfa. It's organically bound minerals, but it's basically kelp juice and alfalfa, which the old therapists used to really value alfalfa. It's really interesting where these things go. But
Thank you so much.
I guess, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll try to see. I'll text you, but I'll try to meet up with you at Ellie's. Yeah.
All right. Talk about that. And then the cleanse, there's a little PowerPoint on the cleanse. And anybody have anything tonight they want to bring in? Like, I like the improv factor.
Well, instead of going through one of these fancy cleanses, why don't you just do water fasting?
Are you talking about that? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It is the simple, but it's not simple because you're dealing with, well, you can start off. We'll just start with that.
Yeah, if you're a novice, there's some complications.
Well, it's a lot of what, as a health practitioner now, I saw early on, Kent, that I need to be at least an amateur psychologist. When I started my practice back in the 90s, I started to see like nutrition's only gonna get some people so far because the decisions that are driving their decision are out of whack with reality. They have what I call now a delusional chooser. That's my first foundation of health is if you aren't clear enough to make choices, you're never going to be healthy. And that's your endocrine and nervous systems, at least on the physical realm. So, and then that determines the other part of your first foundation, which is your blood sugar management. Right? So some people, if they fast and they're hypoglycemic, they could die. And I've had one lady, she went on a keto diet and she wasn't even fasting, but she's a yard duty on like the elementary schools, yard duty on the break. She literally passed out because she wasn't getting any carbs and she was a carb type.
Yeah.
And so she literally passed out. And
This is from water fasting.
she wasn't even water fasting. She was just doing a carb fast. She was doing keto, but she's not a keto type. So she went into this reactive hypoglycemic thing and her blood sugar dropped too low and then her juice in her brain shut down and then she passed out. So as a health practitioner, I have to assess individual people and I can't just put out a blanket statement because I would be held liable.
Yeah.
for my arrogant statement, everyone should just do a water fast because we're in this lawsuit happy America, you know. So that's a level 3 challenge. So if you look at like the way I have my system set up, and anybody watching the call, is there's this outer bubble and it's the basic food chart. And for some people, that's a cleanse. Just eat these good foods like what we're doing here, right? That's a cleanse for some people. Just stop your McDonald's, stop your caffeine, stop your cigarettes, stop your alcohol, stop your late night eating. What else we got? What else do we do? Stop the sugar, overeating, processed foods, bad food combining, pizza with ice cream, healthy. That was my favorite community dinner of all time. Was that pizza night? You know, the mucus forming foods, and oh, that was golden, man.
We had to have a lot of radishes.
A lot of radishes that night, yeah. So this outer layer is pretty easy to do for me. That's my daily diet. And then there's weekly challenges, which shrinks down your, you know, you talk about austerities, right? In India, you do an austerity, you force yourself into limitation. You do austerity. So a weekly challenge would limit you even further. And then there's daily challenges, and I'll go through that in the PowerPoint for the video people. But level 3, so it gets progressively harder. Like a level 1 challenge is, I have it right here, eat 4 raw carrots in a day. It's an easy challenge, right? Well, I could eat 4 raw carrots, right? I could have 5 cups of greens. I could have 3 tablespoons of chia twice a day and some water. So those are level 1 challenges where, you know, it's pushing people, but not too far, right? It's like the SMART goal. You know, it's an attainable, realistic goal. Versus, okay, I'm gonna do a water fast, my first time through, which I did when I was 31 years old, and it was a nightmare. So I took ginseng tea at the end of the water fast, despite my teacher telling me, don't take ginseng as a 31-year-old man. So it made me more hungry, more irritable, and more uptight, because it was 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'd made it that far. But everyone's eating dinner, right? And so everyone's eating dinner, and I went out for a walk. I was like, I gotta get out of this house, you know? And I could smell a barbecue 6 blocks away.
I've been there.
You know what I'm saying? Because when we're hungry, our smell gets bigger so we can find stuff to eat when we're out in nature,
I
right?
can smell like I eaten a chocolate bar like 70 feet away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's why smelling is tied in with food, right? Some of you knew Paul Damon, the holistic veterans guy. I mean, we were out in the mountains where I am now. He found the wild beehive. He could smell the honey.
No.
He's like, I'm gonna go off and find this thing. And I'm like, you really think you're gonna find this? I'm like, there's no way you're gonna find this thing. He came back with some honey later, and I'm like, what? He just showed me where he found it. I was like, man, I would never, ever, you know, over here. But he was he had some good training, this guy, some serious.
He got the honey and he didn't get stung.
He said a bear, looked like a bear. The reason he smelled like it looked like a bear had whacked part of the hive, and the bees were in the process of repairing it. So he was able to just get a quick, like a stick, and he got a stick and rubbed it on his hand and ran away. You know, run like heck. There is a guy in my life, Tim King. Thank you, Tim, for checking in on email, because the email goes out. Tim King is a beekeeper. And so if anybody needs a beehive or wants to lease, you know, you can sort of like lease one. He has like 15 at his house at any given time. So if you want bees on your property, he always has usually extra ones. And thanks, Tim, for doing the hard work of being a beekeeper. And that's a whole blessed job. And I saw him use the smoke because we had a swarm on one of our trees. And Tim, come out here and take care of the swarm. And so he puts on he put on like half of the suit. And he's like, oh, I'm not afraid. Smoke him up. And I'm like, aren't you afraid? Yeah. Wow. All right, well, no digression then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Better not to be.
Well, let's see, digression. Sure, digression for a second. Some of you have been out to the land of the medicine Buddha, you know, that trail where you go up to the top and then go off to the left along the creek there, and it kind of winds up the mountain. Well, there were people running back one day, and this girlfriend and I were hiking up there. They're running like fast. And I stopped them. I'm like, why are you guys running so fast? They go, there's a yellow jacket swarm up ahead. And some dog, you know, pissed off the yellow jackets. And so they're all running like, it's like a swarm of people. And my girlfriend's like, let's go. And I go, oh, no way. This is a challenge. And so I go, pretend like you don't exist. Just breathe and just be aware of your fear. And so I went first, obviously, and she followed kind of right behind me. And they were swarming, you know, in this whole area around the trail. And I was able to skitter around the periphery, and it was like they just kind of bounced off my force field. And we made it around them, and I'm like, see, it's that fear thing. They know that I'm not a threat to them, so I don't exist to them. But the dog was a threat because it's a stupid dog, you know. That's why they were pissed. Kill dog, you know. Because I stepped on a yellow jacket hive once myself out in the forest, and 2 of them followed me for minutes and stung me in the calf to make a point. Don't be an idiot and watch where you're walking, basically, was the message I got. Because I wasn't watching where I was walking. So there might be some value in getting stung anyways, you know. And for some people, it can decrease an autoimmune reaction, like bee venom. Or eating a moldy fruit. That was the whole primal diet way. Sienna and Sierra and that crew had told me a story about it. Some of them had eaten moldy fruit to reduce their autoimmune problem. So how would moldy fruit or bee stings, or even giving yourselves live parasites, which they give to people, they give live helminths, worms to people to stop autoimmune problems. So what the heck is the mechanism there that's stopping the autoimmune response? Bee sting, fungus growing on food, or live worms? How does that stop autoimmune?
It's like an auto interrupt to the program it's running.
Okay, so yes, but what is autoimmune, first of all? We have to establish a definition.
Where the immune system attacks the body.
Right.
So it's
Good
confused.
generalization.
It's confused.
And the root of autoimmune is a perpetually increased white blood cell count of eating too much cooked and refined food that they found out in the 50s. I told you guys. Edward Hell did a book called Enzyme Nutrition, and they termed this digestive leukocytosis. The leukocytes meaning the white blood cells, and osis is a syndrome of, and they would measure people's white blood cell count before they eat and after they eat different kinds of meals. And they definitively established that if you don't get 51% raw, in this climate at least, you will have an elevated white blood cell count after you eat, which isn't normal. And so over time, they're like cops that have been fighting too many battles and they don't see well. And the other function that isn't talked about our immune system is that our immune system is in part there to cruise around and look for broken open DNA, lysed, L-Y-S-E-D, lysed DNA. So if your thyroid has some problem with it and the DNA gets lysed out of the cell, it's cruising around the body, you don't want thyroid DNA landing in your ovaries, right? Because then you don't want your ovaries making thyroid cells. So the immune system's cruising around and gobbling that stuff up because it causes problems. And that's the root of viral stuff right there. Part of the viral problem are these incomplete DNA, which are nucleic acid chains and incomplete amino acid chains. And no one's talking about this, but that's one of the things about this whole viral thing. All this waste and radiation in the sky and the chemtrails is adding to the clutter that our cleanup crew has to deal with in our body. So autoimmune is nothing more than cops that have been fighting too much too long on too much caffeine, and then they just don't see well. And they also see these trails. So if the DNA is being lysed out of the thyroid, then the immune system is like a paper trail back to the thyroid. And the immune system will attack the problem that's causing the lysed cell. But the solution isn't to attack the organ, right? It's to heal the organ, the problem in the organ. So that's how we do a pattern interrupt, you had said, right? It's basically a pattern interrupt where you force a crisis. You can force a fever and interrupt this. Where the immune system now is like, oh, we got a real crisis on our hands. We got triage. This long-term problem can wait. And then sometimes it can reverse because there's supervisor T cells, for example. They sort of supervise. And then you have like killer T cells and more like kind of like mothering T cells. And we don't talk about that a whole lot, but you want the supervisors to be like, hey, let's mother for a while and get the killers out of the way, right? Keep the killers under control. And so one of the bases of cleansing, to put the word out there for cleansing then, is it does halt, it gives it a pattern interrupt, because you're getting rid of the clutter in the system, so the cops or the immune cells can chase stuff down. And to Kent's point earlier, if you can get to the third day of a water fast, then there's a whole thing that science is talking about now, that the yogis knew for thousands of years, that your cells start to regenerate spontaneously after 3 days of fasting. And they call it autophagy, AUTOPHAGY, autophagy. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. So that actually was in Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi. Calcutta University had done a study in 1933, showing the same thing that we just found out and discovered now, that we've known, the yogis have known for thousands of years, you know? Yeah.
Does it have to be like 3 days, you know, for someone of the body type that maybe like that's, I'm just curious, like can it be faster than 3 days to get autophagy?
Well,
Yeah, based on how cleansed the body already is, maybe.
there's certain people that it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to go one size fits all, but I'd have to look at the actual parameters of the study and see what kind of population groups they were looking at too, you know? Like if you're in a hot climate, it's probably not going to be as long because the heat accelerates enzyme activity. Cold climate probably take longer because enzymes are everything. We don't give enzymes enough credence, but they run everything, including our thinking. So people eat too much cooked food, get brain fog. Why? Because all the enzymes are down in the gut and there's none in the brain. So one of the symptoms of brain fog is like, well, how much cooked food are you eating? Are you overeating? Oh, you're overeating and you're eating cooked food. Not good. Yeah. So the moldy fruit, there was a report that it helped. I've never done it myself.
Moldy fruit?
Yeah, it's one of the autogenous primal techniques. You take your favorite fruit and let it get moldy and then put it in a mason jar for a few weeks and let it get this purple, blue, whatever fuzz on it. And you put a little piece of it in the blender with some water and puree it and drink it down. And you'll get a reaction pretty quick.
It's a cleanse.
It's going to cause a purge, you know. Tierra had a version where he would have people, if they had a lot of mucus, he'd have them do pizza and ice cream and all the mucus forming foods. He would give them an ementic like lobelia or the strong licorice tea and then force it all back out this way because the mucus would all come with it out through the stomach. That was one of his brutal techniques. You talk about what's that one? What's the one where you eat and then you throw up afterwards? The syndrome. Bulimia. I talk about a bulimic on steroids, and that's a forced bulimia there. And that there's a certain type of person that would be good for it. They're really big and they've got a lot of vitality because that's a lot of loss of electrolytes and resources because you know bile and stomach acids like valuable resource kind of stuff. Okay, that's kind of answered your question, I think. Which is a great topic because we can keep coming back to that. Like, it is easy because you don't have to think about anything to do a water fast, right? So for people that just want to be over it, it's like, yeah, do a 1 day water fast. But if it's the first time, please have a partner, supervision, you know. And then I do. I didn't bring it tonight, but to Erica's. A lot of you have seen me. I have my blood pressure cuff. You lie down for 5 minutes, take your blood pressure, and then stand up. If that thing's fallen 20 or 30 points, you cannot do a deep cleanse because your vitality is low. If you have a long-term acupuncturist, like some of you do, hey, what do my pulses feel like to you? Are they smaller and more receded? That means your chi has receded, no cleansing for you. And then the other one's your body temperature. If it's normally at 98 and it drops to 97, that should be looked at because that's a deep sign of like, you know, your body temperature is normally this hot and suddenly it's a degree colder. And that's a crisis to the system. So I'll give you an example of a spontaneous cleanse. I've been doing that. The iodine, the one I gave you guys, the prolamine iodine, I'm up to 3 a day of those. And every time I get to about 9 milligrams or more of iodine right now. So the standard process one is Lugol's, but they add a food base to it, the organically bound minerals here, the seaweed alfalfa. So you're getting the iodine in the matrix of the seaweed plus the Lugol's, which is the 2/3 potassium iodide and 1/3 elemental iodine. That was the original formula of Lugol's in 1840. And it was the product for every thyroid condition until thyroid drugs came out in the 70s. And then suddenly, oh, Lugol's is toxic, and we'll give 12. There was a study done at UC Berkeley in the 60s called the Wolff-Chaikov study. These guys, Dr. Wolff and Dr. Chaikov, and they used like 12 rats. It was a hideous study, and they determined that iodine was toxic. And oh man, so there was a guy named Guy Benjamin, thank you, Nicholas Gonzalez, who's now dead. They were fighting that study ever since the 60s and the 70s. David Brownstein, MD, has a great book on iodine. And so why would you want to inhibit the element that you can't make thyroid hormone without? T3 means what? T4, thyroid hormone, means what? What's the T mean? What's the 3 mean? Any idea?
The T is for thyroid, right?
It's for tyrosine. The amino acid is tyrosine base, so it's an amino acid. And what's the 3 and the 4? Hint, hint.
Iodines.
Iodines. So it's a tyrosine amino acid bound to 3 and 4 iodines. Therefore, iodine's an essential nutrient. Why are we blocking it? Because of conspiracy, they want us on bromine and chlorine and fluoride makes you susceptible to suggestion. They were using it in the Nazi prison camps. They're putting sodium fluoride in the water. It's well known in psychology that you use sodium fluoride to cause someone to be susceptible to suggestion. So look at the American population. You know? Put them in front of the idiot box, make them susceptible to suggestion. GMO foods, chemtrails, shots, and you wonder why there's a spell on the population. And there's another thing with iodine that no one talks about, except people like me. So what's the #1 mineral associated with high IQ and intelligence?
Iodine.
Iodine, ta-da! So children who are born from mothers and parents who have a good iodine status are always smarter than kids who parents have a low iodine status.
What's the best natural source of iodine? Like seaweed?
Yeah, like the let's see, there was that island in Japan, Okinawa. So the Okinawans have on the average of 10 milligrams of iodine a day through the seaweed, but that's like a bowl of seaweed every meal.
And that's one of the blue zones of long life, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
And they eat a little bit of meat, but it's not talked about because the vegans like to say, "Oh, vegan this," and it's like if you're living in the tropics, yes, veganism can work. If you have any kind of cold to your climate, not going to work. And there's always these protein deficiencies that I keep telling people about, like you're not sleeping well, you're protein deficient because you're not making neurotransmitters. Your blood work tells me that. Neurotransmitters are made out of protein. Insulin's made out of protein. The counteracting hormone, glucagon, that counteracts insulin, is made out of protein. Your body's bones and connective tissue is made out of mostly protein. And they didn't tell you that. There's calcium this and calcium that. And calcium is not good in the forms they're giving it to people either. All right, back to the point at hand here. So cleansing kind of allows us like that ability to let go and see clearer about where we're at. And if we have the vitality to do so, because doesn't it make sense when you're tired, you don't want to move around a whole lot?
Yeah.
You're a kid, your parents tell you to clean up your room. Kids don't clean up the room when they're tired. Your cell's going to clean up their mess when they're tired? Probably not as well. That's been my experience. Like, I love where I'm at. I started in the early 90s doing what I'm doing, so I don't have to guess anymore. It's like, here's my report card of what I've seen since the 90s, you know, and it's like, it's not all 100% of everything, but it's like, I've seen this, you know. So generally, we want to make sure we're getting enough iodine in our diet. And Lugol's is the easiest way to get massive doses, but if you do it too much too fast, and because it's such a large, like if most of your cells are that big, like molecules like, potassium or hydrogen is a small AMU. Anybody familiar with chemistry? AMU is atomic mass unit in chemistry. So hydrogen is the smallest molecule, and iodine's like this big, and hydrogen's like, like this big here. So the tip of a pen is hydrogen, and this is iodine. What's going to get into the cell easier? Hydrogen, because it's smaller. It can go right through the cell membrane. This is a very large molecule. Let's get like, you guys all know the metaphor. There could be a sex metaphor for this, too small, too big, it's not going to go in, right? So the body has to make a special escalator called SYMPorter, SYMPORTER. It's a special escalator made from, they make it out of B vitamins, magnesium, selenium, there's another mineral there, vitamin C. And David Brownstein championed this work. Fascinating work about getting the iodine into the cell. And that's why people get sick when they do too much iodine. Because it doesn't get into the cells and it circulates around the bloodstream and causes low thyroid symptoms. Causes low thyroid symptoms. I only knew this because I got a client 12 years ago and said, you don't know anything about thyroids. Here's a book, read about it, please. I want you to help me with my freaking thyroid. My client knew more about thyroids than me 12 years ago. So I said, wow, I better learn some thyroid stuff. So I read this thyroid book and got into it. And it's like, wow, this is really essentially important issue in the body. For added effect, I'll show you guys something that rarely people see. And there's this endocrinologist back in the late 1890s, Henry Harrower, and we're going to bless him this evening, Henry Harrower, who actually was studying endocrinology and not just, what do I call that? Endocrine chart? Endocrine organs? There we go. So if you want to look at this chart, anybody, you're welcome to have a look at it real quick. And if you're on the recall, so notice the one thing about this chart. What's at the center of all the organs in the body?
The thyroid.
Now, isn't that rather fascinating? This guy figured that out 120 years ago. We put the brain in the center, and where is it? Over here. But the thyroid's connected to pretty much everything. Look at that. Its web goes to every single organ in the body, pretty much, including the liver, which is an important connection, the liver-thyroid connection. So a toxic liver takes down the thyroid. An iodine deficient thyroid takes down the liver, vice versa. So people don't talk about this, but that's how important the thyroids are. Like if your body temperature is down to 95 point something, we know your thyroid isn't making enough heat. And the acupuncturist would say your triple warmer meridian isn't working well, because that's how the heat is distributed to the 3 burning spaces, they call it. So that's why someone like Molly and I can get along, and different acupuncturists get along, because I can talk their language. I can say, I'm seeing this from my side in the eyes. What are you seeing through the pulses? Because I can do pulses too. And then we get a better treatment for our client, right? Because we have different people looking at it, like, what's the chiropractor say? What's the acupuncturist say? What's the nutritionist say? What's the iridologist, assessment guy say?
How is the thyroid connected to the kidneys? Or is it-
Kidney to the adrenal medulla. And it's a stimulating relationship. So the thyroid stimulates it and it stimulates the thyroid. The dotted line is an inhibitory relationship. And look at the thymus is connected to the adrenal cortex. And the thymus is connected to the thyroid, and the thymus is connected to your testicles and your ovaries. Isn't that fascinating?
That's why it's good to kind of tap on your chest.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And also in acupuncture, these points right here are called spirit gate points, and they're on the kidney meridian. Spirit gate points. I saw this picture of Jesus once. It was like a painting. Jesus was doing this, and there was light coming out. You guys ever seen that painting? Yeah, it's like this light's coming out. Wow. Like there's point. I think they're pointing at his spirit gate opens, right? And wow, what a shot. But that's one example of just having a lot of colleagues over the last 13 years, different medical doctors, and they're all through the Standard Process Company. I learned all of this, what I've learned in the last 13 years because of the Standard Process Company. I cannot speak enough volumes about the excellent practitioners, and it's still family owned. And it's one of the top companies to work for in Wisconsin. They just got some award, like #1 company to work for in Wisconsin. Out of the high sales companies. Why would people want to work there so much? Because they kick butt. They take care of their people. Even during COVID, none of the people were complaining. Because I talk, I'm a dorky guy. Call, place an order. How's it going over there today? Oh, I got to wear the mask. Well, we just have to, blah, blah, blah. Because they're big, So I like that they're family owned still. On to the nervous system topic. I'm doing pretty good this week. So this nervous system thing, how many of you have any experience with nausea, vomiting, much at all?
Not a lot.
No.
At certain times.
Okay. Nausea? No, nobody? Nausea, vomiting? A little bit. No,
Well, once in a great while.
it's a great while.
I mean, everybody's thrown up, right?
Right.
Almost.
You're not a, but it's not an issue. None of you have an issue with that
Not
edge.
a
No,
chronic issue.
Okay,
I did for a while, but only when I.
My daughter
ate
did.
rich.
right, because you're more of a carb type.
My
And
daughter
the-
has an issue with it,
Okay, let's go into that then. So
but she has an issue with everything. So. Here, name it. she's-
you're on camera, you know,
She doesn't.
you're on film.
My daughter has an issue too. She throws up really easily. She throws up a lot.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go into that right now.
Yes. Okay, I thought that was her. That was her, Jay.
Yeah.
That was
Okay,
her
so what I'm
daughter.
gonna do,
Oh, I've done it.
Yeah.
what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the early warning symptoms that are part of that form that you've done the bubble form, you've done the bubble form, you've done the bubble form. You know, when you bubble in all the symptoms. Group 1 is your fight or flight symptoms. So acid foods will upset your stomach when you're in excessive fight or flight too long. Why? Why
Acid
would-
on acid?
But no,
You
but
don't have any stomach acid if you're fight.
Stress.
you're not making secretions, which means are you renewing your stomach lining very easy? No, because there's no, it's sympathetic nerve dominance is catabolic, which means you're tearing tissue down to keep energy high. So you're not making new tissue and you're not making secretions and stomach acid either. So it's a point where the lining gets stretched thin. And I have a client like that right now. We have to rebuild the lining. So the test you do is you do a little apple cider vinegar and a little shot glass of water on an empty stomach. And if you feel horrible afterwards, then you've got your answer. You have an ulcer, a permeable lining stretched too thin. An ulcer is nothing more than the balloon's been stretched too thin, too long.
You have an ulcer at 22.
Oh, yeah. They always feel worse after they eat. Ulcer people always feel worse after they eat because the ulcer is being aggravated.
What is the test? Just water and vinegar?
Apple cider vinegar and water is the test on an empty stomach.
On an empty stomach. At what proportion?
2 or 3 teaspoons is more than enough. Because if it's raw down there, you don't want a big load. It could be 1 ounce of water and 2 teaspoons of vinegar is enough. There's a lot of symptoms. I'm going to go through this pretty quick. Gets chilled often.
How old is your brother?
Lump in the throat. These are all signs of excessive fight or flight. Getting chilled often. Lump in the throat. It's called the plum pit. Feels like a plum pit's in the throat. Dry mouth, eyes, and nose. There's the secretions again, right? Dry mouth, eyes, and nose. Pulse really goes fast after a meal, right? Can't calm down. Cuts heal slowly
Yeah.
because there's no repair. Gags easy. Unable to relax, startles easily. Extremities cold. Extremities cold. Hands and feet are cold.
What are these all symptoms of?
Excessive fight or flight in your
So
life.
what do you do about it?
Well, I'm letting down the symptoms first. Strong lights and sounds will irritate the person. Urine amount reduced. Heart pounds when you go to bed. You have the pounding heart when you go to bed. Nervous stomach. Appetite reduced. A further symptom is cold sweats. So night sweats are related in some way to this nerve dominance. Fever easily raised. Neuralgia-like pains, like neuropathy, neuritis.
Is that like,
So we can help her pretty easy.
thumb finger?
Yes. They stare a lot. They don't blink a lot when it goes really far. And then sour stomach is often. So if you're watching this video, then see the first grouping is sympathetic nervous system. So the blood goes to the muscles, the secretion of the inner organ stops, the repair stops, the body mobilizes for action. The body will not digest well in sympathetic dominant conditions. So when that goes too far, we keep pushing, then we go into parasympathetic nerve dominance. And this is the next set of symptoms that you're really in the ringer if you got these going on. Joint stiffness on arising. That's a classic long-term, you've been stressed too much too long. Muscle, leg, toe cramps at night. Only at night. Butterfly stomach with cramps. Your eyes and your nose water too much. Eyes blink often. Eyelids swollen and puffy. You get indigestion soon after meals. but always seems hungry. Rapid digestion, vomiting frequent. See, there you go. Hoarseness frequent, breathing irregular, pulses are slow. So when you get this kind of person, this is a protein type right here. They live in this world because they're always hungry. And so what's going to slow down, because they have a fast metabolism, their parasympathetic nervous system is trying to slow them down. So what are the two types of foods out of protein, carbs, and fat that will slow down a protein type?
Protein and fat.
Protein and fat. Carbs do not help. Carbs actually oxidize too quickly in a protein type. Well, I would have oatmeal as a child and be starving an hour later.
Yeah,
Because it would just go right through.
yeah.
So I needed like eggs and sausage. And I got to tell one quick story here. So there was a client that came in through our network, Kelly Deary referred, and his 15-year-old son had a vegan mother and a meat eater airline pilot father. And he was stuck in the middle. Poor kid. And he had an autoimmune. He had a problem with his knee, and he got an infection in the knee because the doctors did some stupid biopsy. And they wouldn't own the fact that they caused it, but his trabecula, his bone was dissolving in his femur. He's 15 years old. So what was the doctor's solution?
Antibiotic.
Yeah, you all know the system pretty well. No, it's actually worse. It's actually worse.
Osteoporosis medication.
Knee replacement for a 15-year-old. That was the recommendation. That's why they came to see me. They're like, this is fucking ridiculous. That means at least 2 or 3 more knee replacements in the lifetime because they only last 20 years. So that means this guy at 35 will have another one, at 55 another one, at 75 another replacement. That's a lot of surgery in one lifetime, folks. Well, I went the extra mile for this guy, so you know. So he was seeing an acupuncturist, which is helping, but the acupuncturist was shaming him into a vegetarian diet. And the kid was a protein type because I asked enough questions to know that. There was no intake forms. He's a 15-year-old kid. He's not going to fill out intake forms, you know? But he wanted to get better, so I fished the information out of him. I go, so what do you like for breakfast? I go, pretend like this is fantasy land. And he goes, eggs and sausage and bacon. And they were feeding him this freaking vegan crap, you know? And he was dying, you know? He literally was not getting the building blocks to make his bones better. And so he was in an autoimmune pattern because they were shaming him into this wrong diet. Wow. It's like trying to put unleaded fuel in a premium fuel engine. It's gonna knock and pain. Yeah. So he was playing volleyball after 3 months of working with me. He was back on the football team, you know, like. So the mom had to deal with her cholesterol myths theories were all shot to hell with me, of course. She maintained her veganism, but she couldn't complain about cholesterol anymore because I told her what was really going on. So it's a good example of, you've got to give the right food to the right person. The 15-year-old's a good example of that. He wasn't compliant. I gave him the bone protomorphogen and the raw bone meal wafers, calcium food, you know, that you guys are familiar with. And, you know, he was maybe a fourth to a half compliant, but he's 15. He's going to heal fast, just given the right direction. And so the strong protein, I mean, he was you couldn't believe how happy this kid was. Because he leaves and I'm like, hey, Mom, you ready to buy lots of sausage and bacon and meat? She was all cringy. I had a lot of fun with her. And the dad was all happy. He validated his meat and potato diet. He validated her.
Oh, right, we can eat breakfast together.
Exactly. It was a lot of fun working with that. But don't you see, I mean, it's like, knee replacement, 15-year-old, what? Yeah, those are the cases I get. Like, what is wrong with these doctors?
Yeah. I don't see a problem giving you the jab for COVID either.
No.
No problem there.
So on these symptoms here, they're kind of the opposite. Like, so circulation poor is another common one with both. Getting a slow start. Constipation and diarrhea alternating. If you have constipation and diarrhea alternating, that's also a liver issue. Because liver spreads the chi. And remember, all the food from the intestines goes up to the liver, all those portal veins. So the liver's got to take all that fluid in, process it, and then get it back out into circulation. And that's why I see you to some degree. There's a point right here I check, you know, when you're laying down on the massage table and I check along here. Well, if the liver is swollen, I had a client, he died of liver cancer. His liver was all the way down to his hip. You know, he died of liver cancer. You know, sad case. Yeah, I got to see him, you know, day before he died. They had the pumps because the liver kind of helps with lymph circulation. So they had to have pumps on his legs, pumping his legs manually because lymph doesn't move unless you move. Breathing irregular, gagging reflex slow, difficulty swallowing. So when these go too far, then the remedy, good. So we're back to these remedies. And this is where cleansing, if we can clear out, we have enough vitality to cleanse some of this garbage out of us. And if you're watching this video, folks, this form is generally available. All you have to do is contact us on the website. And this is a good check for a cleanse. You might take this test here, and then I have a report that I use for it. You just add up all the points. And the higher your point score, the more toxic you are, basically. So we have people do these and then do it after a cleanse. And, oh, I had 100 and I only have 79. If you're honest with yourself, because you have to, it's a self-check, right? Or we take photographs of the eyes and the tongue we used to do, which I have gotten away from a little bit with the cleanse. And you can see change in just like a week or two of cleansing in the eyes and the tongue. It's why the acupuncturists like to work with me, because I'll take a photograph of the tongue versus just telling the client what's up with their tongue. You got a photograph, a series of photographs over a year. A year ago was this, and now it's this. Look at that. It was a chopped up hamburger helper, and now it's sealed up in pink with a good coat. That's how I tell the state of the intestines. It's like I had a client up in Marin. I said, send me a photograph of your tongue because he has signs of ulceration. I said, send me a photograph of your tongue, and if your tongue is all chopped up and, you know, hamburger helper, that means your whole intestines are that way. It's the same tissue type all the way down to the anus. Those skin cells. These cells are the same that are lining our gut, that line our lungs, that line our sinuses. They're all epithelial tissue. It's one of the secrets that we're not taught. There's only 4 cell types in our body. Only 4. Skin, muscle, nerve, and connective tissue. That's it. They're all variations of that same cell type. So your skin cells line everything. They line your liver, they line your eyes, they line your nose, they line your gut, they line your lungs, they line your skin here. And so doesn't it make sense that if you have skin problems, the internal skin will also be messed up? Or if you have tongue problems, it's going to reflect in the internal organs also. A lot of swollen tongues. I have a chronically swollen tongue. But what does that mean? If it's swollen.
Dehydration.
Could be, actually. That's a good one. I never thought of that. But yeah, sure. Swollen intestines. Swollen tongue. So if I go and fast and eat a lot less, my tongue will shrink by 30%. So it's how I know I have challenging digestion. And it's why I take digestive insurance every meal. I take enzymes and stomach acid and herbs, pretty much every meal. Because I don't want to be 90 and realize, oh shit, I haven't been absorbing protein and minerals the last 30 years. And now I'm screwed because I didn't pay attention earlier. So to me, it's worth the money to spend on the insurance because the older people don't make as much stomach acid as the younger people. You all know stomach acid is HCl, right? So the body's actually incorporating hydrogen ions and chloride ions into the stomach, where the blood right next door is 7.35, and it'll drop to a pH of 2 in the stomach. So literally just a few cell layers removed, you've got alkaline blood and you got this acid stomach that could dissolve your finger. That's a high stress thing for the body to do, because it has to make all that mucus in the stomach lining so you don't dissolve it. So you have cells that make mucus and cells that make stomach acid. That's got to be timed properly, doesn't it?
Yes.
You better make the mucus before the freaking acid. So that's where the brain harmonizes at. So a lot of digestive problems that don't get well with normal therapy, you've got to look at the thermostat upstairs.
And what part of the brain is that in?
Pituitary mainly.
Okay,
You've got to go pituitary first, and if you don't get results, then you go upstream to the hypothalamus.
okay.
And I have the tools for that. Good tools, like a long-term colitis case, it doesn't get better. You can go into that brain system and clear up stuff that won't clear up otherwise. And the other thing that's, as far as gut lining goes, it's not talked about, is you've got to have fresh food, vitamin C, and protein to rebuild your gut lining. And carbs aren't going to do it, and fat isn't going to do it. And those fake ascorbic acid crap made from glucose isn't going to do it. You know, people go, I got my ascorbic acid injection, happier. I'm like, you just had, you know, sugar injected into your body, basically. Like the green smoothie we had, which is a little bit left here, if you haven't seen this, folks, this green you see here didn't exist yesterday. That is vitamin C. That's the whole food vitamin C. That's sunlight being converted into sugar, which is being converted to ascorbic acid and copper and tyrosinase. Remember the tyrosine thing? Part of the vitamin C complex is an enzyme called tyrosinase. The enzymatic management of thyroid hormone occurs on some level in the vitamin C complex. You hear anybody talking about that? The stuff you see in buckwheat, rutin, and the bioflavonoids. That's in the whole food vitamin C. Copper is part of the whole food vitamin C. So they're going to give you an ascorbic acid injection and telling you got vitamin C. I tell every doctor I work with, even the cancer therapists that are big time in the Bay Area, I say, you cannot say you're giving them a vitamin C injection. That's incorrect. You're giving them an ascorbic acid injection. Let's clarify what we're doing here. And that's why people don't work with me sometimes, because I'm very direct. Like, call it what it is. It's not vitamin C. Linus Pauling was incorrect. Shorty, the guy who invented vitamin C, got the Nobel laureate for it. Pauling took his work and bastardized it. They could never cure scurvy with ascorbic acid. Never. They talked about this 90 years ago. It couldn't be cured with it. They called it crystalline ascorbic acid. And then they're lying now. And they're making it liposomal. What does that mean? Fat soluble. That's the king of arrogance, to think you take a water soluble vitamin and make it fat soluble. So anybody on liposomal C, you're a guinea pig. You are a guinea pig with someone's arrogance. Vitamin C is water soluble. It is not fat soluble. The creator made it that way. And some idiot with an ego said, oh, liposomal, better than blah. Fuck that.
I thought
So-
that they just made it to have a liposomal package. It wasn't changing the vitamin C itself, they're just putting it inside a package so you get through the cell.
Liposomal implies they're putting lecithin, they're whipping lecithin in with the vitamin C, which is making it more fat soluble. And that's an experiment that's never been done in human history. And that's my point. I'll let you guys do this for 5 years and then come see me, but not my people. I'll let someone else do the experiment, because we need a 5-year experiment on this to see what happens long-term. We don't have that. Same thing with avocado pit oil. That hasn't been used in human history. Avocado oil everywhere now. You're a guinea pig. We'll see how things work out in 5 years. You know, because I stick with what's tried and true, what has worked for centuries. And they introduced this new stuff, like canola oil was the big rage, right, in the 80s. Oh my God. That was an industrial grade rapeseed
What
oil.
makes you think that the avocado oil is coming only from the pit?
I don't know where it's coming from. I'm just saying it's an experiment. We've been eating avocados for centuries, but
Okay.
can you name avocado oil 100 years ago being used? No, you can't.
Got it.
So I'm not attached to it either. I'm open to being proved wrong, but I'm just telling people, like, I'm really cautious with new stuff, because the industries out there are capitalistic. They're here to make money. They don't give a fuck about your health. And I own that language, you know, they don't. There's very few people out there that care about your health and have to charge you more for the higher quality, like Shea Panini up in Berkeley, right? Alice Waters would make you pay top dollar to get the fresh local food, and that's okay. Please don't dumb it down for me, right? Shadowbrook dumbed stuff down. Shadowbrook had like olive oil, canola oil mixtures. I mean, we're telling you that. You're paying this $50 meal and you're getting this diluted down olive oil. F you, you know? There are a bunch of restaurants who are doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sneaky, but it's about making an extra buck.
We're surviving.
Or surviving.
Yeah, staying in business. Yeah.
So for me, it's like, as a health professional, it's like, I'd rather say, hey, I'm going to charge you more and give you the higher quality than dumb it down or lie to you about. And that's where my point is with, you know, Mercola has things behind vitamin C, but I stand against even Sayer G now, vitamin D. Sayer G has his whole green med info, vitamin D is the best thing ever. And I say, yeah, it is, from sunlight and cod liver oil, because there's 27 isomers of vitamin D in natural form. You're getting only D3. And the root cause protocol guy has long-term studies of people that have D3 toxicity. What do you think sunstroke is? Vitamin D toxicity. And we don't talk about that.
Part of D3 toxicity would be if you're not getting it with K2 and MAG and all the complementary nutrients.
But see, someone's ego decided that. And my point is you get it from nature in the natural matrix. No human ego can decide what D3 needs to come with. Not ever. Because nature's put it in with 27 other isomers or chemical isomers, and they're taking it out. And the whole premise of D is false. The D test is measuring the stored form of D in your bloodstream. There's an active form you can measure called calcitriol. That should be compared because when you give D3, you wipe out your mitochondria's ability to metabolize oxygen and iron. That's the data. So you wipe out your mitochondria ability to make energy because D3 chelates out copper and magnesium, the very two minerals you need to control oxidative metabolism of iron and oxygen. I got the studies on that, Karsten. You know, years and years of studies. We've been lied to. And these people jumped on board. I'm okay with D. Okay, I have people taking D3 with me, but not for more than 3 months at a time because it's a hormone being sold over the counter.
Yeah, like, so, you know, at our latitude, you would only want to take it in the winter, and ideally get it from the sun. I mean, we don't have cod. Eating cod liver to me is kind of also not natural.
Oh, but the making of D3 and K2 is natural?
No, I'm saying get it from the sun 6 months,
Okay.
and I supplement in the winter. And
I just tell
also take
people-
K2 and calcium and all the complementary nutrients with it,
So the complementary nutrients for D is vitamin F.
which I take that too.
Can you get vitamin D also just from pork fat?
You can get it from an animal if they're eating foods that are living in the sun and eating sun, you
You
know,
can get
sun
some
dried
mushrooms
food.
that have been in sun.
Yeah, so you've got sun-dried fruits is another one. Sun-dried fruits and veggies, cod liver oil. Some of the herrings and the sardines have a little vitamin D in them. I go with like who's getting results and who isn't. And so Morley Robbins of the root cause protocol was pointed towards them 5 or 6 years ago. And I've been sort of vetting them for 2 or 3 years. And he has such great data on the D3 problem that I'm not recommending it at all, except if they're depressed or they have seasonal affective disorder, or because you've got to look at all these factors. Because if their hemoglobin's low and they have their whites of their eyes are blue, hypoxia, I'm not going to give D3. And so the action of D, because I'm here to teach the actions, the action of D says get nutrients into the bloodstream from the gut, calcium, right? So in the peripheral tissues, the action of D is saying get all the nutrients back into the bloodstream from your peripheral nerves, muscles, and skin. So it's like a sponge taking everything out of the skin, back to the bloodstream. The action of vitamin F, the only company that makes a vitamin F concentrate, Standard Process, Cataplex F. No one else is making vitamin F. So the action of F is to get stuff out to the periphery. So I haven't taken a sunscreen in 13 years because I take Cataplex F. And I haven't been sunburned once. That tells me it works. I've had hundreds of people do the same thing. So they keep taking it. And our ancestors would boil down barley or some grains, and there was vitamin F in flax. If you boiled down flax or barley or some grains, and they would just sip on the barley water all day if they were in the sun, like working. And that was their vitamin F.
Now, are you saying vitamin F are you saying that's like omega-3s, or what's vitamin F?
It's part of the E complex, and I have papers on it if you want to look at it,
It's
Carson.
like
Nope.
tocotrienols.
Nope.
Different than vitamin E complex.
The vitamin E complex is composed of E1, E2, E3, tocotrienols, tocopherols, lipositols, selenium. It's composed of a lot more than we're told.
Right.
So F is part of this huge matrix. And D, you could argue that D and A are also part of it, and K. There's this huge matrix, and that's why the Western pricers call it the Woolston factor, right? Some animals that eat foods grown in the sun, spend time in the sun, their fat is just this radiant, right? And so there's a little bit of D and F in there. And then so cod liver oil, the reason why it works is because it has the A and the D and a little bit of F in it. So it's a balance. You take D3 and you're telling your body to put everything back in the bloodstream. Not good long-term. Especially if you have a propensity like I did. I would use going to the beach to pass out in college. I could reliably go to the beach and feel tired even after 12 hours of sleep because of this D overdose thing.
My understanding is that if you're getting it from the sun, you cannot overdose.
That's incorrect.
That's what Mercola writes.
Well, Mercola is incorrect because I see people like if you get tired when you're in the sun, you're getting an overdose of D. And because your liver can't process it fast enough, it's being made, but from cholesterol in the skin, and it's like a signal, and it's supposed to be broken down immediately in the liver. Your hormones are supposed to be made because out of all your hormones, like the tip of this here is how much hormone circulating in your entire body. That's how fiery and toxic they are. So when you talk about hormone problems, then the liver has to break down all the hormones in the body. And it's got a pretty large job to do, doesn't it? It's a pretty overwhelmed organ in today's world. So a lot of the D problems and the estrogen problems and the testosterone problems are actually liver problems.
Right.
And we don't even go there, do we? Because we're not taught to go there. And the liver is also the organ that's responsible for our clear decision making. The gallbladder part of it is, do I go this or do I go over here? And so I see a lot of gallbladder pulse problems in clients. Gallbladder and stomach, like they're stomaching too much in their life and it's overwhelming their system, so they can't decide whether to go left or right. That's classic stomach gallbladder pattern in my world. So bottom line is, if you're going to take D, I have a client that he was taking D up in Alaska for, a little seasonal affective disorder. We had him on cod liver oil with the D3, so he's getting the full spectrum at least. And he had a little liver support. And he was quite happy. It really helped his mood. He had St. John's wort, which is a sunlight herb too. So this is great. It's great discussions. I like the edgy, challenging discussions because then we sort of elevate, like get out of dogma, get out of opinion and well, what are we seeing? And so D is a more recent phenomenon. I'll put it that way. They've been the industry's been trying to toxic, like D2 ergosterol was put on people in the 50s and it caused a lot of problems long-term. So that's why I'm saying the skepticism of it's being pushed. So therefore I'm skeptical.
The D2, not the D3.
The D3 is being pushed. Like Sayer G's pushing it on Green Med Info now. And I'm like, oh man, we needed this in context. So I'm the one out there saying, here's the vitamin F studies that Royal Lee did back in the 50s. And here's the chart that shows what vitamin E and F actually is. So let's go back to what reality is and not go to this vitamin E is tocopherol. That's not even close to what vitamin E is. Royal Lee found 3 forms of vitamin E, E1, E2, E3. Wow. That was blew my socks open 12 years ago. There's 3 forms of vitamin E. I never heard that before. Right? So one of them is actually what helps the gut heal. There's a product called okra pepsin E3. It has okra and pea vine juice. The peas that grow. The vine juice of this one type of pea is high in vitamin E3. And it helps seal up wounds in your gut. It's a process, right? It's a process. We're almost getting to 9 here. Okay. So the remedy then is to stop. If you're having this nausea thing and you're overdoing it, and really to stop and sleep. And then if you need, if you're nauseous and you can't stop, then this phosphate liquid here, you can pass this around. You guys can look at it. This is a bright fluorescent yellow acid called orthophosphoric acid. It's very sour. I have a client that she was one of my breast cancer patients 14, 15 years ago. And she says if she gets a little bit of nausea, she doesn't even put it in water. She just puts down a whole dropper full, which to me is too powerful. And she says it knocks her nausea out immediately. I put it in some, it knocked mine out pretty well for a little while though. So there's that phosphorus connection to the nervous system. It's one of the few synthetic center process makes. This is a synthetic product. And then when you go into parasympathetic dominance, you need to make sure you're getting enough protein and minerals specifically. So alfalfa has some protein in it, and so does seaweed. And then this is the seaweed alfalfa mineral complex that nourishes the parasympathetic nervous system. So the two together, when you're sort of down and out, if you don't have adrenal fatigue, then that can get you started. Then if you have adrenal fatigue on top of it, then you need the ashwagandhas and the whole food vitamin C and a lot of rest. And if you can't sleep, and then you're really stuck. Like the tired and wired is a bad place to be. And then ashwagandha and Romania and licorice are used for that, herbal medicine generally, get the cortisol down in the evening. And I tell people just exercise your ass off. Where's Katie? She left.
She left.
Yeah, it's she said she's more tired in the evening because she's getting up at 6:30 and working all day. Yeah, a good hard day's work will make you sleep well. And, we're just kind of a dumbed down, non-exercise based society, right? sleep follows activity, and activity follows sleep. So we don't have enough activity, we don't sleep well. I'm not sleeping well at all, but I'm not surfing and doing my intense exercise right now. So I'm waking up 20, 30 times a night going, what the fuck? Oh, that's right. I need to go kick my butt, for a few hours and be tired. So a lot of us don't realize that we're just not moving enough. We're just not moving enough. And that's part of the way out, is even if like today I was at the bottom of the barrel, I call it, chemtrail flu, felt horrible all day, but I made myself move. Every hour I gotta get move. I gotta go move. I take a nap for a while, I'm gonna move again. I take a nap and I'm gonna go do my yoga practice now. But it's not very long of moving because I would get nauseous and start to want to vomit. If it's just a few minutes of moving, that's how bad it gets for me. And it's like, take a breath, slow down, go back to a sitting pose. And now do a posture, and that's the way out, is to have the will to push through the fear of what the fatigue means. We're talking about this whole fear and willpower thing in group the other night. How do you push through fear? With willpower. One other answer was, how do you push through fear? Well, you break down what the fear is about. You kind of put it in your head and go, well, what's this part over here and this part over here? And let's intellectualize our way out of it. And that's one way to get out of fear. But if I got a 20-foot wave that's waiting for me out there, intellectualizing that ain't going to help me. It's willpower. It's willpower. Last piece here. If you're doing the cleanse, then I want to do a couple of, you can do lab work and hair mineral analysis. And so if you're on the call here, hair mineral analysis and blood work can be done for less than $100 now through my system. You can get a basic blood work for 35 and the hair mineral analysis done for 45, and then interpretation might cost you 50. So that helps you see where you're at, right?
Hair and mineral analysis?
A hair mineral analysis.
A hair mineral.
It's specifically called a hair tissue mineral analysis. And you cut your hair,
Okay.
and they burn it in the lab, and then they measure the mineral content of the burnt hair.
Okay.
And so what it tells you is there's ratios of minerals. It tells you how much insulin resistance you have, how much thyroid hormone resistance, but that isn't talked about, and how much stress hormone resistance you have. So you could have a normal T3, T4, but have thyroid hormone resistance at the cellular level and not know it. And that's the value of this test.
So do they use hair right at the root? Because
Yeah.
this hair is
Yeah, that's 4 years old,
right,
right?
right, okay.
So that the inch, you pull it and cut an inch off, and then there's a little paper teeter-totter scale that tells you when you have enough.
Oh,
And then you put it in this little envelope and seal it up, and then they send you the report. Well, they send me the report back. Usually it's a week to 2 weeks, sometimes 3. And I've been doing this for 10, 11 years. It tells you your lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, and aluminum in your hair, nickel. Why would nickel be in your hair? Sure.
Stainless steel cookware.
That's one reason.
Oh, stainless steel.
How do they make hydrogenated oils?
I wouldn't know, I don't buy them.
They use a nickel catalyst in hydrogenated oils. So I had a nickel spike in my hair a number of years ago. I was like, why is all this nickel? Oh, I ate a lot. I mean, my mom was like imperial margarine kind of lady, for a while. They were the hat. Da, da, da. Me and my brother cried. We cried for like a month. Mom, don't take our butter away. Like, no, there's imperial margarine's only 50 cents for a pound. And
Well, and it's healthier for you.
that's right. She believed it.
Yeah.
And we cried because we knew we were getting something less. Da, da, da. And then,
That reminds me when my mom replaced whipped cream with Cool Whip.
oh yeah, Cool Whip. Cool Whip.
It's healthier.
It's healthier.
you should just call it Cool Whip.
Oh my God. Yeah, so you see, we've been taking for a ride. That nickel.
Can I just acknowledge that we all survived all that?
Yeah.
We're very tough.
And some of us still swim in the ocean at New Year's Day at 9 o'clock.
That's right. You're king, man. So what this shows you is kind of where you're at. So I wanted to show that to the audience because it's really you look at the mineral ratios, and then it also gives you your calcium levels in your hair, magnesium, sodium, and potassium, which are your 4 main alkaline minerals, the major alkaline buffers. Then it gives you your iron in your hair. If it's low iron in the hair, you don't worry about it. If the iron is elevated in the hair, then you need to start doing some research. There's copper in the hair, manganese, zinc, chromium, selenium, and phosphorus in the hair. And it shows you the ideal range here. So this person here is very low on all of them. So if all the minerals are low, what does that tell you about the person?
They don't absorb minerals well.
Yeah.
Or they're chronically nervous, because the body uses minerals to calm down the nervous system. So if the nerves are too hot and agitated all the time, the minerals get used up. And that's the importance of magnesium. See, magnesium is involved in every reaction of energy in the mitochondria. It's not called ATP anymore. It's called MG-ATP. So it's called the magnesium burn rate. So the more stressed we are, the more magnesium we burn up. And I wonder why I have toe cramps at night now. It's because there's a lot of energy moving through a lot of us right now, and we're burning it up, the magnesium, really fast.
Or because you're breathing through your mouth.
That's a really good one, Cindy. Breathing is an important part of calming down the nervous system, and we don't do that enough.
Right.
And I love your reminders there, because it's an important thing to remember to breathe. There's the system survey. And I have a report for the hair mineral analysis that's shown here. So I track stuff for people. Like you can see, oh, your hair mineral analysis calcium was 103, and now it's 229 2 years later. That's how you measure process. Your hair calcium increased over 2 years. What's going on? That's a process, right? Your phosphorus stayed the same, so it's harmonized. Your magnesium went up to 53 from 15.
Wow.
So why is the magnesium going up in the hair? The hair is getting rid of something. So this is why we do a chart of multiple blood work, so you can see like, oh, I went like that. Oh, but during the spike, I was eating a lot of sugar. My glucose got elevated in that one blood work. So now that makes sense, right?
So do you ever do hair analysis, like do one down here and do one up here to see like what's
You-
changed?
I've never done that, but you could.
And you just alluded to an important point, which is if you're looking at hair analysis, it could mean, oh, great, I've got a lot of magnesium. Or it could mean, oh, my body's getting rid of a lot of
It's
magnesium.
throwing off a lot.
Yeah.
How do you know which it is?
By the other minerals and being 12 years into it like me. I mean, there's guys that wrote, I got a book
Doing
this
stuff like
fat.
blood ferritin and there's other-
Yeah, I got a book this fat on hair mineral analysis by a guy that Michael McAvoy did what's his name? He's down in Arizona. Michael McAvoy went and studied with them for like 6 months. That's the kind of guy he is. You want to say, well, who is this guy? Larry, he's got a great website too. So, and then blood work is another thing you can do. Like you just get a basic blood work. And this is people that are watching this on the recording, you can just kind of pause it. So if you're watching this recording, you can pause this. So spring cleanse options. So you have fasting. You can do a raw fast, like just have raw foods only. That's just cleanse. That includes raw meat and raw dairy if you want. A juice fast. You could do just juice. You could do a water fast. You could do intermittent fasting. An easy one is like, I'm just going to have lunch every day. And that will help a lot of people. They know they can have one solid meal a day. They might get a nice cleanse out of that, right? Because if you have one meal, that means you got like a 20-hour window, of intermittent fasting. Eating only veggies for some, or eating only fruits and veggies as a fast. Eating vegan. Well, it's not really a fast. Having just green juices. And you all know my beet radish salad. The beet and radish salad is very cleansing. I got a client with COVID. I don't think she wants to know her name, but some of you know her. And so she said, what do I do? And I go, a lot of radishes. Grated radish and lemon. That's the single best decongestant on the planet. I've never seen anything better work, especially daikon. Enemas, I'm a TMI guy, so I was doing enemas every week. And now that I'm not in a place I can do them, it's been a month or more. And when I do enemas, they reduce my dark thoughts by 99%. So I'm floating around in a pretty dark place the last few weeks because I really need to get this thing fleshed out. And then, so my theory is that one of the
You're
standard
talking coffee enema,
generally, or just herbs, but coffee enema is a great antidepressant for me, particularly. So there's a saying in the standard process, that bubble form we just went over. In the liver area, nightmares are correlated with liver toxicity.
Now, getting back to like the cleansing process, would you talk a little bit about the idea that you need 3 things for a good cleanse? You need to mobilize the toxins, and then you need to like sort of conjugate or grab the toxins, and then you need to eliminate the toxins. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then they just recirculate in the body and they get redeposited in fat cells.
That's right.
So you gotta have, those are 3 key things you need for a good cleanse.
Right. So there's people that aren't going to go to all the lengths necessary to do that, but that's where I used to do the clays, the bentonites, what's the new one that's been everyone's been talking about, the zeolites. I used to do raw rice. We just chew on raw rice, 300 chews, and then the rice would be like a bulldozer. It would chelate stuff out of the body and get these zebra striped poops. Yeah, I can.
So if I never have nightmares, it means my liver's clean.
Some people, the liver, yeah, well, that could be, but it also means your consciousness is clean, because there's it's like kind of like a rat study, and it's just one variable of liver toxicity is nightmares, but there's hundreds of other elements to nightmares. There's this one context is, in my context is, if my intestines get full of sludge and I don't drain well, and so I have a theory that toxins become dark thoughts for me. And the toxin itself in here has a consciousness because it's bug shit.
I'm just always having little nonsense things, that's all.
Well, I don't want to get stuck in that because Carson had another question. So I think there's truth to what you said, but so that's foundation 3 and 4, Carson, in my system. Foundation 2 is your digestive ability, right? 3 is detoxification and mobilization and decongestion of the system. And stage 4 is drainage, foundation 4. So that's why I put that together, is because of what you just said. So foundation 3 is a certain level of nutrients. And we just went through this in my apprentice course. Like, what are the nutrients that detox needs? B vitamins, magnesium, minerals, right? The betaine, methyl groups. And so if we don't give the body that, then it can't run those pathways, right? So generally, there's another component to detox, and then the drainage part, like if we're not having bowel movements, that's first. No detox occurs till we're having a bowel movement, basically until after every meal. Or if they're not having any, like I've had clients that have 1 a week and they think that's normal.
That was my dad.
1 a week?
Yeah.
That's a lot of backed up doo-doo.
It's in the thousands.
Poor guy.
He's pretty healthy too. It's a miracle.
Wow.
She's still
Yeah.
alive.
He's still alive. Yeah.
Well, he's a lot
He
better.
now poops every day.
Yeah, he's a lot better now. I mean,
Thanks to Kirsten.
Yeah.
Kirsten taught him to do some things.
High five, Carsten.
that was when I was kind of starting to do what you do.
It's the most important step. That's the perfect first step, because it's not that hard. It's just eat more vegetables, eat more raw foods, and your bowels will start moving more. Have some more raw carrots. It's an easy one for people. Like, just chew on some fucking raw carrots, And so my drainage ones are the beets seem to work through the biliary system for drainage of the biliary system, raw beets, and raw radishes work through the lymphatic system drainage. Dry skin brushing is a great skin drainer. Doing breathing, like, now if you're gonna do breathing, and I was always a rapid pranayama, breath of fire kind of guy until I met you, and then I realized, like, I think I need to slow my breathing down rather than speed it up. I thought that breathing faster was better. Get all those toxins out of my lungs. That's what I thought.
It's like eating more to cleanse.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this.
Yeah.
It's not my heart's racing and I got cramps and
Yeah.
I'm lightheaded, and that's not good. Crazy. Hot and cold therapy is another way to cleanse, right? You
Sweating.
go from hot to cold, right? That
What if
mobilizes
somebody
them.
doesn't sweat? What does that mean? Like, I can't get myself to sweat.
Really?
Yeah,
You guys come see Craigie.
I know.
Yeah, we'll get you sweat.
I'm sweating as we speak from.
And my skin is dry, like if my moisture won't go out through my skin.
Yeah, we got something for that.
Yeah.
And silence and rest is silence and rest is actually a cleanser for some people. That's where I'm at. I mean, God literally forced me onto my bed today. It was like, you've been pushing too long, too hard. And guess what? I felt great laying down, but as soon as I stood up today, it was like, ugh, nausea again. And then I just lay down until I get, okay, no, I'm only about a fifth as nauseous, so I can move on with my day. So silence and rest is a real edge for some people because they're used to distractions, overwork, over helping, over exercise, overeating. Shall I go on?
Over everything.
Over everything.
I'm over
What if you're under?
So my ploy with these people is sit in a chair for 5 minutes a day and let everything be as it is. That's your goal for the next week, is just sit down for 5 minutes. That's not overwhelming. Set the timer and let everything be. Let your mind be, let your body be, and then see what comes up for you. And I get people to get fascinated. They go like, wow, I never let myself be before. What a concept.
I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. There's
Yeah.
beers and there's beers. I'm a beer. It's really hard to get you to do something.
And let's see, I think I went through the whole list here, working through the list and almost done. Okay. If you get access to I have a lab test menu here, and that goes through all the lab work that you can get through me out of pocket, which you don't have to see a doctor when you see me, is what's great. We can order lab work and stuff without seeing a doctor. And then finally, my favorite slide of all, these are the little Kupfer cells of the liver, and they did an animated, the rubbish collection section of the liver. Look how cute they are. They're little octopuses, see?
Yeah.
They're called Kupfer cells. And they're the little garbage men of the liver. Aren't they cute?
Yeah.
Whoever did that, thank you, whatever artist did that. That's just great. Look at those little guys. It makes detox a little bit more fun. You're smiling. So I think enough water when you're cleansing, just some basics, enough water, don't eat late. If you could just get all raw foods, that's a good spring thing. And if you're a protein type, you may have to do raw protein and fat, like raw butter and raw oysters or raw meat if the weather's cold. Because cleansing is hard if you're a protein type in the cold weather, because you need the resources to stay warm. Because if you're cold, you're not going to detox. And the carb type would need, they might need some raw, really light proteins like raw sprouts, or some lighter fat like raw olive oil, raw avocado, more the carb type acceptable fats. But if you're a pure carb type, you'll know so because you don't think about food a whole lot, and you want lemon juice and olive oil as your dressing. You don't want the fatty dressings. The protein types always want the bacon and the ranch dressing and the chicken fat, and that's a pure protein type. The pure carb type is like chicken skin's like abhorrent to them. Steak fat's abhorrent. Bacon fat's abhorrent. And I see these people, they hate it all. I'm like, wow, you're the opposite of me. And that's why when you see someone that says the universal diet is this, what do? You run from that SOB, because there is no universal diet. And that's our closing statement for the evening at 9:19. Sorry, Kirsten.
Oh, it's all good.
Cheryl, thank you for attending our little talk here.
You're welcome. It was good.
You like it? Thumbs up?
Yeah, it was very good.
Thumbs up.
I got a couple of comments. I was been reading the Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush, just getting into it.
Nice.
And I remember you saying that it is, I think at the end of this thing, doing those